What's up, dude?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Excited for today's show. We have Dr. Drew on. He's your friend, huh?
Good friend of mine. You know what's funny is I was thinking about it. He was the very first celeb we ever had on our podcast, and it was quick. He was in and out within like 5 minutes because when we started up this podcast, we were in studios that were right next door to where he was doing his radio show. So I remember one day during either a commercial break or after a show, he popped in. And he was like officially the first celeb. So now we've invited him back to do a full segment with him. And I'm really excited. Did I ever tell you how I met Dr.
I
Drew?
was about to ask, how did you guys become close? What's
So,
your relationship?
so back in my TMZ days, I remember I was on Facebook one day, and Stryker, who was his co-host on Loveline at the time, Stryker had posted some photos, and it was him and Dr. Drew like flexing, and I was like, "Holy shit, Dr. Drew is jacked!" Like
Ripped. Yeah.
ripped. Like you just didn't expect it, all right? And I thought that photo was so interesting, and my job was obviously pitching out photos. So I reached out to Stryker, got permission to use the photo. I put it up on the show, and then I don't know, like maybe a month later, they invited me to come in for Loveline. I got to be a guest on Loveline, and we talked about it. And then Drew and I, and obviously Stryker as well, we hit it off. Drew was the first person to introduce me to Twitter. He like literally signed me up for a Twitter account on his computer. So I think that was hilarious back in the day. But we've always kept in contact with any big like celebrity death story. I mean, I was literally texting with Drew when Michael Jackson died. I think I was tweeting with him when Prince died. I mean, it's just we've had a friendship for many, many years now. So I'm excited to have him on.
Yeah, it's actually every time I've met him, he's a very, very intelligent guy. He's one of those guys when you talk to him, you could realize how smart he is.
Yeah.
But then he's so on top of stuff. Obviously, with social media and with the internet and even TV. I mean, he essentially came on TV for me. I guess Loveline was the first time I was exposed to him, and he was like this modern day Dr. Drew. Like for me as a young kid, it was
Modern day
crazy to hear the
Dr.
word.
Drew.
It was crazy to see these dirty words kind of sit. It was or to hear those words he was saying on TV was kind of wild. But
Yeah.
he was great. It was fun. It was funny, and he just came on at a great time. But he's a super cool dude. Before we get to him, we always like to say, please leave a review because with iTunes in the algorithm, the best thing you do to support this podcast is give us 5 stars and leave a good review.
And
And when you
sub,
do the
obviously.
review, yeah, and when you give us a review, we will read that review on the air. So Dax, do you have a review you could
I got a
share with us?
review. All right, it's right here. It is from Dana Boo 101, the best. It says, I absolutely love this podcast. Dax and Adam are an amazing team, and you can tell how much fun they're having together. I'm often laughing out loud as I listen to their banter. Keep up the good work, boys. You're crushing it. I'm totally hooked. I get it so excited when a new episode comes out. This podcast is my new obsession. Well,
That is
that
very nice.
is a fantastic review.
That is an amazing review. That's an example of
That
what
one
you
we
need
need
to
to
do.
post on our Instagram page or something because that was a good one.
Yeah, that's a great review. I mean, give us more of those guys, and that's the best thing to do to support this podcast. And it's super easy. It's super easy. But again, I'm excited for today's show. Dax, tell us about today's guest.
All right, today our guest is one of my good friends, a very, very smart man, a doctor, producer, host of like 1,000 shows, including Loveline, Celeb Rehab, Sex Rehab, and many, many more. Dr. Drew, welcome to the welcome to the welcome to the podcast. I was going to say, I don't even know what I was going to say. Welcome, Dr. Drew.
Yes, I got a
Of
question
course.
for you. Obviously, you're a doctor. I have a rash. Do you mind checking this out?
Straight away, we're going right there. Well, I'm looking. I mean, here's the thing about, but it brings up a really important sort of topic, which is that if you show me a picture of the rash, I could come up with some ideas about what it might be, right?
I hope
The
so.
same is true of people's behavior. You can look at people's behavior on a screen and go, oh, that could be a number of things you can sort of fill. And so people always like, you can't possibly say anything unless you've examined people. No, on the extremes you can tell for sure. Not for sure, but you can tell at least sort of the spectrum of what might be going on.
How often do people come up to you on the street and they literally do like show you their arm or show you a rash or pull out a picture? Like, how often does it happen?
It happens, and it's usually, literally they're not going to show me in public kind of thing. Just like Adam. Just like Adam.
Just like him. Awkward one.
I remember in the sort of Loveline MTV days, I remember people used to stop me in these really sort of inappropriate environments, and I like people and I want to help, and so I would get engaged in these conversations, and it was very uncomfortable and unsatisfying. And I remember one day I was going into like a convenience store from a gas station. This dude jumped out of his convertible and like backed me into the candy section with a whole litany of questions about essentially, you know, is his sexual functioning normal? And I thought, oh, there's a reason that you walk into an office and you open a door, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end to the relationship, and you walk out and close the door, because in these out in the wild, there's no structure. It just goes on and on and on. And oh, I just thought of this. And what about that? And it's very, and there's no follow through. And it's, you know, I have very limited information.
Paid for it either.
I don't care. That I don't care about. But the lack of satisfaction in what the interaction is, what used to always bug me. And I think that there's no structure to it. So it's interesting.
I would say when you go on a plane, people love when you're on a plane with, because they just feel safe. You know, they feel like, you know, Dr. Drew's here. If anything happens, there's a doctor on board. You know, if someone like you, Dr. Roz, is on a plane, everyone's just going to feel just in a better mood when they see you.
I like that. If that's true, I like that. However, it's I'm sorry, it's a little false. Although I have had to run to stuff at a plane before, more than a couple of times, I think, if I remember right. One recently, there's a guy behind me, and he was I could tell he was talking about a case, and I knew he was a physician. So, you know, the call comes over the overhead thing, and he and I got up and ran over there. And this woman was, she was unconscious, and she had some vital sign issues, and he and I started working on her, and she woke up and she looked at me and she made me take a selfie with her.
She's like, I'm good. I just need a selfie.
That was weird. That was weird.
It's funny because you can't, like, you have to be the first one to jump up. If it comes on the overhead, is there a doctor on board? There's no like, hey, I need to finish watching my movie or my drink.
No.
Everyone's going to be the first person to look at is you.
No, you got to get up. I mean, you got to help out. But the comedy is, Adam used to always say, when people go, Drew, what kind of doctor are you? And Adam would go, hey, he's the kind of guy when the call comes over the loudspeaker, is there a doctor in the house? He has to get up and go attend to the person.
So you can't take that one off.
What kind of doctor are you, like, officially? What
Jesus,
is your
Dax,
medical
how long have we
license?
known each other?
I know,
right,
but
so,
not everyone else knows, so I'm going to ask the questions so that the listeners know.
Okay, so here's my pedigree. So I went to Amherst College back east. I went to a U.S. University of Southern California Keck School of Medicine. Then I did an internal medicine residency. Then I did something called a chief residency, where I taught for a year, and then I taught general medicine for 3 years after that. I was sort of headed towards cardiology, were it not for the fact that I was moonlighting at a psychiatric hospital, and I got very interested in the medical management of psychiatric patients. I ended up becoming the chief of the medical service at that psychiatric hospital. All the medical problems were down on the drug unit, at least a lot of them were, and I enjoyed working down there. So I got very good at drug withdrawal and got interested in drug addiction. Then I saw people recover, and that was so extraordinary to me. I thought, I want to know more about this. So I started getting more involved with it. Was asked to be the assistant director of the program. Started working towards getting my board certification in addiction medicine. And then the director quit, and that moved me into the directorship position. So I really had to get my act together in terms of my understanding of treating drug and alcohol addictions, and have been board certified a couple times on the addiction medicine side. And then I'm a fellow at the American College of Physicians. I taught not just through general medicine, I taught through the Department of Psychiatry for a long time, like 10 years. And then I also taught through the Department of Adolescent Medicine years ago for a couple of years, doing lecturing and that kind of thing. And then I lectured to first and second year medical students for a long time. So I did a lot of teaching, and I had a lot of different sort of assistant clinical professor type positions.
So do you have one of those physician license plates?
No, we don't have that in California.
No?
Mm-mm.
Man, that sucks. New York, you guys get all the great parking spots.
I know, we don't have that in California. We get nothing in California. We get hassled. That's what we get. all the liability, just liability. That's what we get.
So what makes a good TV doctor? I feel like you were, one of the pioneers to really do it. And not, you weren't the first, but you were hosting a show and, and doing a great job with it. But how did you make that transition into really hosting TV as a doctor?
One accident after another. I mean, just like addiction medicine was sort of an exploration and an improvisation for me, radio was just something that came along in 1983. And at the time, I was, that year and for the next 5 years after that, I was working on AIDS patients constantly. And we had one Anthony Fauci at the time telling us young physicians that we needed to go out and educate in public health message. And we developed all these strategies for changing behavior. We got very good at it. All of that was abandoned during coronavirus, strangely, all of it. Very weird. But in any event, that motivated me to kind of go in there and educate. And I was stunned that the first time I showed up on the radio, which I thought was going to be a one-off, that all the really important material was coming in the middle of the night to a radio station. And nobody seemed to know anything about, didn't have the term HIV yet. We were calling it HTLV and then HTLV3. And we had just stopped calling it grids. And now we were starting to call it AIDS. And no one seemed to know anything. I was stunned. And I thought, well, I got to keep coming back and doing this. So I did it for the next 10 years for free, thought I was doing community service. And then they kind of rolled it out 5 nights a week. That was essentially the week that my wife got pregnant with triplets, at which point she said, no more community service. You have to get paid if you're out of here 5 nights a week. So I asked for a job in radio. And then some television producers came along and said, we want to turn this into a TV show. And I was like, how does that work? I don't know what that is. And by the way, if I'm going to do it, all I've got is Friday afternoon and Saturday afternoon. I can give you that, and otherwise leave me alone to practice medicine. And so that's kind of how it happened. Everything else has been, I sort of was a resistant media person. I thought it was important to do some of these things, but I wanted to be left alone to practice medicine. And Loveline came around on MTV, and then that kind of went away, and I kept doing radio. And somebody showed up and wanted to do, a TV show about what we were doing on the drug unit. It's called Celebrity Rehab. And I thought, well, it's interesting. No way you can do that, but well, let's look into it, see if there's something we can figure out here. And that's what we did.
Why do you think Loveline hit a chord like it did? Because that show was crazy successful. And not only that, I went on Loveline, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And every time I went on, it was the insane amount of texts and calls from people because they loved that show.
Yeah.
Loved it.
They loved it. It was like a clubhouse. It was just a place that people gathered at night to share ideas and thoughts and some humor that you just couldn't get anywhere else at the time. I mean, you got to kind of put the historical context in place because radio had such power back then. Radio was the equivalent of, think of some internet, Reddit or something. It's something where young people went for their information and their cultural sort of identity, which was radio. And as such, when you gave them a chance to come in and participate and talk and give good information and talk about things that were intense and then have some funny on top, that was a pretty powerful combination.
Yeah. Absolutely. But as a doctor on TV, obviously a lot of your colleagues, a lot of other doctors are watching the show. Did you ever feel, I feel like for them, you were just an easy target, maybe some sort of jealousy because,
sure.
Oh, here's this guy who's on TV. We're going to come out, we disagree with his analysis.
Well, here's the thing you got to understand. There's a couple layers to that. One is with physicians, everybody's an expert. Everybody. So everybody feels like that I should be the one that's up there talking. And they're right. They are as knowledgeable as I am. But what they don't understand is the skill set and what's required to go out there and do this. So there's sort of an unreality in terms of let me do that. In fact, that exact thing happened to me early on when Loveline started getting some traction. There were some newspaper articles. I was a resident at the time. I was actually an intern, sort of finishing my internship. And my residency director went apeshit. He went nuts on me. There's something wrong with you. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. And then also they couldn't understand what this was because they were old. And as a result of that experience of my judgment as a 25-year-old being questioned, I now I don't question young people's judgment. I assume they know something I don't know. They have a sensibility that I don't know from the perspective that they have. And I had to stop doing it for a while. He threatened to fire me from my residency position. This is the same guy that then put me in the chief position 3 years later. 2 years later, he came up to me in the hall and went, "Are you still doing that radio thing? I'll tell you what, I'll take over now. Let me do it." I was like, "Oh, okay, asshole. No problem. No problem." So this is a weird, now that's one layer. There's another layer, which is when you're out there doing stuff, it's pretty easy to be critical and just to take pot shots. Like the guy I identify with most strongly is Dr. Oz, in that you got to understand, to become a cardiovascular, cardiothoracic surgeon, that is, particularly at the time he trained, top of the heap, only the brightest and best. And then he became the director, the chief of service for cardiothoracic surgery at Columbia University Hospital. This is like, there's nobody at a higher level than that. And so, he's a super bright guy, he's super capable, and yet still people take pot shots at him. And that to me is like, I mean, he proved himself. You should show him a little deference for that.
Yeah. Besides being a really good guy.
And he is a good guy. And by the way, when you're doing TV, you're out there, you are doing the work of the producers. You're not doing your work. This is all a huge infrastructure that you're trying to kind of control and make good and make sure it doesn't say anything wrong and stay on top of it. And if you blink, you find yourself saying something you think, oh, should I really have said that? Because it's coming at you constantly from the production team. Yeah. It's hard. It is hard. And so that's what he gets criticism for. And that's not fair.
Have you ever, during your experience from all the years doing TV, radio, podcasts, had producers say, "Hey, maybe you should say this or say that," just to create good content, but yet
constantly,
you're like a doctor, you're like, "No, this."
Hey, listen, let's go to Celebrity Rehab. Celebrity Rehab. I didn't know how reality shows were produced. I don't know how that works. I know that if you turn cameras on when you're in a drug treatment program, there's tons of drama. Always, always, always. That's the way a drug treatment center is. People are sick, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. And so I knew there would be a lot, but what I didn't know was that the producers, like the first week, I found producers in the patient rooms going, "Hey, Jessica, did you hear what Mary said about you? She said you're a bitch. What do you think about that?" Have you seen the series Unreal, the TV show Unreal?
Yeah.
Go for Rachel. Yeah, I had a bunch of Rachels working on my patient, and I went, "Oh my God, what are you doing? These are patients who are ill. What is going on?" And I threw so many fits that in upcoming seasons, it got to the point where I said, "Okay, I'll do a season. Here's the deal. No producer gets near a patient under any circumstances unless I'm in the room, number one. Number two, no one is allowed to make eye contact with me from the production team unless they're going to ask one of 4 questions. Doctor, how's the patient going? Doctor, what's the discharge date? Doctor, how much is this going to cost? Doctor, what's the family therapy going to be? You ask me those 4 questions, we'll talk. Otherwise, you make eye contact, I'm taking these patients down the street to the hospital. I'm getting the hell out of here. And I was dead serious about it. It took that to really get things under control. Of course, they didn't trust that things would happen. And I know they were just doing their job, but this is not that kind of an environment at all. And so that was really interesting. That was kind of an education for me.
I think the whole celeb rehab show, I mean, it's fascinating. Did you have a hard time getting like celebs to sign up for this show? Because this is exposing everything, like a lot of people's darkest fears or things they want to keep out of the public. You're exposing, and I'm not saying you, but the TV show is exposing this to the world. And I got to think that's a very scary, vulnerable situation.
So did you see I guess E! did a series this week that aired about reality shows? And Ilanya or somebody that's a TV therapist who's not a physician was taking aim saying, "Oh, this is too delicate to do on TV." Why? Why can we show an ER, an appendicitis, a gunshot wound, any other medical problem, but you can't show brain problems on TV? Really? That's stigmatizing, and it's creating a continued bias against brain disorders that's somehow different than heart disorders and abdomen disorders. They're the same. They should be treated the same. The HIPAA protection should be the same. And we sort of pointed that out. Now, in terms of the exposure and the courage to step forward with this stuff, that really fell to the first group, right? because we really didn't know the full impact of that. And during that first group, I was nervous. I kept checking in, going, "You okay? Are you okay? Do the cameras bother you? Do you want to go to the hospital? Are you all right? Is this going to work for you?" I was just very upset and nervous all the time. And it's interesting. Finally, Mary Carey, about, like after 10 days of me with saying that over and over, Mary Carey, the porn star, leans into me and goes, "Drew, I've done just about everything on a camera. This is easy. This is not a problem." And I thought, yeah, they know what this means. They get what they're doing. They've consented to this, and they understand what they've consented to. Now, what did happen that we did not anticipate was that most of them came in to get paid, to be on TV, to sort of resurrect themselves, to have a sort of a resurrection style story, and also to screw with us. They didn't understand that we were going to take things seriously. And in every group, there was a really interesting thing that happened. They came in with their sort of resistance and their desire to mess with us. They saw, we called them by their real names, not their television names or their porn star names. And we, Mary Carey was Mary Ellen to me, and we cut through all the BS and took very seriously the treatment. And they all recognized that, participated in that, and they went from sort of resistant and wanting to mess with things to appreciating the treatment. And then this was the extraordinary thing. Every single one of them had this experience, wanting to be an example for other people because they valued what was happening and they wanted to share it with other people. That was something that was astonishing to me, and I was so grateful for. It happened in every group. So they all went from whatever motivated them to come in to benefiting from treatment and then wanting to be a good example for other people and to share it with other people.
I've got to really, this just literally popped into my mind. Were you nervous? Because obviously a lot of these people obviously have addiction problems.
Yeah.
But to go on a show, they're handing out money for people being on the show. So are you nervous that this is going to backfire? And it's like, now I just came into a bunch of money. What am I going to do with my money?
I worried about that, but I did worry about that. But the money, there's a whole discipline at Harvard giving drug addicts money to keep them in treatment. So we have proven that kind of positive reinforcement not just keeps people in treatment, keeps them engaged in treatment going forward. So I knew that would work. So they whose phone is that? No, that's Susan's. So I knew it would be something where they wanted to be on TV, so they weren't going to leave, and they wanted to get paid. So I urged the producers to make the payment contingent on completing treatment. So it worked. It worked. Usually people leave treatment, they bail out, they don't complete. To have 100% of people, Daniel Baldwin being the only exception, complete treatment, that was extraordinary. That was another piece that, and by the way, Dan, a lot of these people, after I treated them, and some we treated for a year or so afterwards, even more sometimes, once we concluded that, a lot of them became friends. I'm no longer the doctor to anybody, but Daniel Baldwin is a great example. He's a wonderfully recovering guy now. New person.
I could also see being one of the hardest shows to produce as far as even casting, because so you keep asking about
the casting, and indeed, it's people whose agents and managers and things are desperate. They've been trying to get this person help for a while, and now they have a leverage. Like, hey, you won't go to Cirque Lodge, but I'll put you on TV and you'll get paid. Come on, let's go do this. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people then become willing.
I feel like the other hard part about this show is, again, these are people that have mental issues and addictions, and you have lost patients after the show.
It's a fatal illness, the opiate. I think people now finally understand that the overprescribing of opiates created Jeff Conway. And every time I treated, for instance, there were others, but Jeff Conway was sort of the poster child for this. I would treat him, we'd work with him, we worked with him for months afterwards. His pain team would literally say, "Why do you listen to those people that are trying to brainwash you? You're going to need these medicines forever." And they put him on so much medicine at one point that he had to be in a nursing home for it to be safely administered. It was terrible what they were doing to him. And they eventually killed him. And 2 weeks before he died, he called me and he said, "I see what's happening now. I'm ready to do this." I said, "Jeff, let's go. I'm ready anytime. Just call me. We'll put you in." And 2 weeks later, that was that. And it was, again, benzodiazepine opiates as prescribed by my peers. And that was killing my patients by the thousands at the time. Just unbelievable. And I think people get that now, that's what was going on.
Which person have you had on the show that made the most radical change for the better? Like the one they're like, man, this was, and it may not be solely you, but it's just really did a major turnaround that you still kind of keep in touch with, or maybe seen through TV and media. And like,
well, there were a bunch of them. There were, I mean, Daniel Ball was a great example. I mean, he's like a new person, but the one that really created a new arc for her life was Jennifer Ketchum. Penny Flame, the porn star.
Sure.
She went from alcohol, cocaine addict, porn star to now married with a child and a medical social worker. I mean, a really high quality professional. I mean, then she went up to Washington. She went back to school, got a graduate degree. I mean, amazing. Wrote a couple books. She's phenomenal.
Hey Drew, what's your opinion on the whole Britney Spears situation?
So here's the deal.
About a lot of celebs over the years. When Michael Jackson died, we were on the phone. When with Britney, this documentary comes out. She says she's fine. I'm watching the videos, and I kind of beg to differ, but I want to know what your thoughts are.
She is not fine. She was seriously enough psychiatrically ill when she had her psychotic break to require 14 days of locked unit. Okay, she was in a locked facility for 14 days. That status is reserved for the most seriously ill psychiatric patients, period. So we know that she had very severe psychiatric illness. This is not something that can be parsed. This is not arguable. 14 days, hold. They literally, after day 3, they bring a judge in to assess the doctor's opinion to make sure that this person's civil liberty should continue to be restricted. They have to be really sick. So we know that. Then she had an excellent psychiatric team who got her stabilized. I mean, she would be on the streets or dying right now. Forget it. She would not have made it this far. So that's what happens to cases like that. They go to the streets and they die. So she's alive. She became productive. Has a life, and she's a mom, and she does all these things. The conservatorship that the father took on was extraordinary. Let me tell you why. First of all, the psychiatrist to ask for it was already an outlying thing. But psychiatrists sort of give up at a certain point. They don't tell the family they may bring it up, but families rarely do it. They always take the position that, oh, they'll be upset with me. They won't like it. They'll be unhappy. Our relationship will get ruined. It's a life-saving move. She's alive today because that psychiatrist set it up with the dad. Now, she's been stable long enough, and I would dare say maybe too long, for her to have a try-off conservatorship. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. If she wants to try it, they should set up a way for her to do that. Now, the dad seems willing to do it. He just wants to transfer it over to somebody else. His and that psychiatric team seem to really understand what they're dealing with. They understand how dangerous this is, and they're doing it carefully and systematically. Hats off to them. Most of the family members whom I have suggested that to have a dead child because they refuse to do it. So I am telling you, this was a very good thing. Perhaps it went on too long. Perhaps she deserves a chance off, and then we'll see what happens.
And do you think her mental illness was something that she was born with, and it was just going to be a matter of time before it came out, or it's something that could have been induced by the public or whatever?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's not a separate diagnostic manual for celebrities. I mean, how many years have I been telling you that? It's not like, oh, the Britney Spears diagnostic manual or for child stars there's just the diagnostic manual. How people get to their psychiatric diagnosis always involves a gene-environment interaction, right? I mean, sometimes it's more genes, sometimes it's more environment. It's always very hard to tell. Bipolar, I don't know her family heritage. And I heard there were some substances involved too, and I don't know if that was just part of her bipolar or if she actually had addiction. It doesn't seem like she had addiction because she never really, I don't see any evidence of treatment for addiction and recovery and that kind of stuff. And yet she's doing quite well, right? So that suggests it was more about her psychiatric illness. And a bipolar that comes on, it's often genetic. Maybe there are some substances that help trigger it. Being raised as a child star, talk to our friend Danny Bonaducci about how problematic that is. And these things all fit into what creates the syndrome we see in the present. Generally speaking, when it comes to psychiatric illnesses, about 50 to 60% of the illness, the way we say this, like say with alcoholism and addiction, 60% of it is determined on the basis of genetics alone. So about 50, 60% genetic, 40, 50% environment, and thus you get serious mental illness.
What are your thoughts on Dr. Phil? Like after you've seen his show, what are your feelings?
He does excellent TV show. He does an amazing TV show. He's almost a genius at that. What I don't like is that and this is not his fault, this is the audience's fault, frankly, is that he has created, and I deal with this on the teen mom side of thing all the time, which is this notion that the way you deal with serious mental illness is you just confront them. Don't you know that heroin is destroying your family? It's like, yeah, they know. They would love to stop. They can't. That's why it's an illness. So this idea, some of the women in Teen Mom have had very serious psychiatric issues and have teams of people on their side working on them. God bless them. And then what I get is, why did you confront her? Can't you see that fill in the blank? Like that would make her worse. That would really make her destabilized and would not serve anything in terms of the show or her well-being. So people have this concept that you can somehow, I don't know what it is, like confront or hold accountable. I mean, serious mental illness takes years to treat. There's a reason it takes years to treat. You come on hard and strong, and all you get is force fields and instability of people feel humiliated or ashamed.
Is there one of the teen moms that you're most proud of? I guess how she's grown up or developed?
I think they're all extraordinary. The ones that we still are involved with, but Caitlin, Caitlin and Tyler. Caitlin had, was treated several times for pretty serious psychopathology, and she is amazing now. So good for her.
I always remember watching their storyline, and I just were like, these two are like so far above and beyond like their age. I just always thought they were mentally so much further along than everyone else.
It's so funny when I was asked to do the show. So back to public health messaging and coronavirus. Here's how we know how to make people change with public health messaging. You create a narrative arc. You create a narrative about someone who's like the person you're trying to reach or is relatable to the person you're trying to reach. And you show the consequences of their choices. You throw in some humor and drama and maybe some music. That's how you change behavior. So when they came to this idea that we're going to show what happens when people get pregnant in their teens, I thought, oh, this is going to affect teen pregnancy. There's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind this will have a significant impact on young people. And so I was watching the first season and flying out here to New York on the plane, and their narrative came up in that first season. I was like, oh my God. I told the producers, I said, I have to meet with them before I go out there. I have to, please bring them to my dressing room. And they did. And it's so funny. They're 17 years old, and they tell the story now that they thought they were in trouble and I was going to scold them or something. And I came in, I said, you guys do you understand how extraordinary your story and how much you've shared here? And they were like, huh? I guess just our life, it's really, we laugh about it now. It's kind of funny.
What are your thoughts on Pharah Abraham? Obviously she did Teen Mom, then made a sex tape, and now you see her with her daughter still. She seems like she's a good mother, but we've seen what she's done with the media and to enhance her career. What are your thoughts?
Pharah, look, when people make their living on television and through media, and they lose that job, I think to expect them to suddenly withdraw from those sources of income is unrealistic. They're going to keep trying to find ways to use that to continue to make a living. They're now kind of, I wouldn't say indoctrinated, but they're good at it. They have a public persona that might be something that they can turn into something. So it makes perfect sense to me that she would continue to do that. It's different than how do I feel about Pharah, right?
Yeah.
Pharah is not an easy person. I have only affection for her. I told her when she left that I would miss her, and I do. But that doesn't, she's got some personality stuff that makes her very, very challenging to work with. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the interactions I had with her on TV. They were extraordinary.
Are you nervous what she's doing to like the relationship she's gonna have with her daughter? Because I don't know if she sat her daughter down over some of the decisions she's chosen, but
I don't know what's happening there. I'm not involved with her anymore. What is it you're seeing?
I mean, obviously the sex tape, you see what she's done, kind of enhancing her looks over the years, from her butt to her everything like that. But
so she's gone that way, and that is what caused her to lose her job on MTV, as far as I can tell. And so has she continued to go down that path? Is that what happened?
not that I know of lately, but I mean, I don't know what her main source of income is. Maybe besides doing, I think maybe she fools around doing some sort of webcam stuff. But
I will tell you one thing that the producers always said about Pharah. As challenging and difficult as she was all about work. She was all about getting things done and doing. You know, she would start multiple businesses and do. She was very, very. I don't want to say entrepreneurial so much as diligent. She's very diligent and you know, willing to work. She work hard, and that's an asset for her.
She's a crazy hard worker, and I'll tell you, she was one of our. Like, we've obviously had tons and tons of guests on this podcast, but she was like on time.
Yeah.
She was prompt.
That's fair.
It was insane. I was like, yeah. I was expecting something else, to be honest with you.
No, that's not. No. I maybe she's for lack of a better way of describing it, she's professional. Yeah. Right. And she can make it impossible for you when you're interviewing her, but she would not be unprofessional in terms of not being ready and not showing up and that kind of thing.
All right, so Dr. I got a question for you. Do you think fame is a drug? Do you feel that people can get addicted to fame?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But it's shifting and changing right now. It's very interesting. So, you know, I wrote that book, The Mirror Effect, about fame, essentially, and about narcissism and about people that pursue fame. We were able to show with our models that fame is an attempt to heal injuries from childhood. Narcissistic injuries. That's what our theory was. That's what our research showed. And we had the only published research on this. So, you know, we felt pretty strong about our position on that. We also were reporting that fame as an autonomous motivator showed up internationally during the 80s and 90s. It was before that, when you asked young people, what do they want to do with their life? They would say, I want to have a family. I want to have a profession. I want a career. I want a house, whatever, you know, sort of normal, for lack of a better word, sorts of pursuits. And then in the 80s and 90s, internationally, you start seeing fame as a separate motivator, that I want to be famous. Now, with the democratization of the internet, the digital access, that I think we saw that peak. And now I think people understand the emptiness of all that. So you're seeing people less, it just feels like they're doing it less for fame's sake more these days. There's a lot more about, it feels like it's more entrepreneurial in terms of trying to create businesses and things like that. But here's the really interesting thing, that I've seen this narcissistic turn. I mean, I saw it literally on the diagnostic sheets at the psychiatric hospital I was working. All of a sudden, everything became narcissistic disorders. Well, I think we're seeing another shift now. I think for the last maybe 3 years, we have subtly and without notice been shifting from narcissism to histrionic disorders or histrionic traits. And histrionic is a relative of narcissism, but it's marked by excessive emotionality and, you know, being swept up into mobs and to be, you know, overly critical and just, you know, hysterical, literally get caught into hysterias. And we have clearly moved that way. And I was listening to some lectures on this the other day, and there was a notion, and I'm gonna have to dig into this research a little more, a notion that excessive praise and reward may be one of the underlying causes or contributing causes to histrionic disorders. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound interesting?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's fame right there for you. Everyone getting praised for
getting rewards for everything. But we are certainly histrionic now, man. It is uncanny, the hysterics that we're all in at all times.
Yeah.
You recently did The Masked Singer. How was that experience for you?
Best produced show I've ever seen. What a nightmare for those guys. I mean, I want you to think about it. You have all these celebrities, everybody's on a non-disclosure agreement. It's all secretive. You're building massive costumes around everybody. You know, you have to find music, clear music, coach the music up, choreograph and teach the choreography, get them in there, do the song. And you know, there's like 12 or 14 cameras going. It's one of the most extraordinary productions I've ever seen. And they have fun. It really is. You'll notice everyone talks about how fun it is. It really is a lot of fun.
How do they keep it secret behind the scenes? Because, like, do they have the judges on like one side of the building and the contestants on the other? Like, I just gotta imagine.
So the contestants have their own sort of little trailer aisle that is completely walled off with tents and curtains. You are, when you walk out of your house in the morning, somebody comes to pick you up. That somebody doesn't really even know who he's picking up. You must be covered so none of your skin can be exposed. You cannot. You're not allowed. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to speak until you walk in your trailer and your producing team comes in and shuts the door. Any other speaking is completely forbidden. And so you can't tell what race the person is. You can't tell what sex the person is. You can't tell anything. And people take it very seriously. I had a thing, where we had my wife sign. You have to sign non-disclosures, and they're very intense. And I turned out I had a vocal injury. I was aware that some of my voice was screwed up. And so I had to have a vocal rehab coach show up. And my son, who was living with it at the time, started asking questions like, what's going on here? I said, I'm going to sing the national anthem at Dodger Stadium. Just no big deal. It's just warm it up. And then she started showing up like 3 days a week. And he's like, why are you doing this? I went, sign the paper. Here we go. We'll tell you about it. Just sign the paper. And people take it very seriously.
That's crazy, though.
Like to pick the costume?
And by the way, what's that, Adam?
Do you get to pick the costume at all?
Everything about everything is a process. The first costume conversation, they call you and they go, what were you thinking of? Because here's what we're thinking of. And with me, strangely, we both were thinking Eagle. It was very weird. And I didn't expect Rock Eagle. That screwed me up a little bit because in terms of song choices and stuff. But yeah, then they start building the costume, and you go to a little warehouse in Glendale, and they build it all around you, and you make multiple visits there. And people keep asking, is it? Are you really performing? You have a choreography rehearsal for like an hour on Saturday. You come back on Tuesday. You have a dress rehearsal, and then you sing, and that's it. And if I had not gotten kicked off early, I was thinking, God, I don't know how much longer I can do this. It's so intense.
Now, when you do the dress rehearsals or you're going to pick out your costume, is it the same thing? Like you got to be covered from head to toe when you leave your house to go do that?
No,
stuff?
Yeah, the dress rehearsal, yes. And which is very awkward. When you do the dress rehearsal, when you do the choreography, you have the head on, but you're not allowed to speak to the dancers. So it's kind of awkward. The choreographer's there telling you, and the dancers are doing their thing, and you've got to communicate, with hand gestures. You're not allowed to speak. It was so funny. The dancers enjoyed working with me, and they started guessing who I was. This is my favorite guess. They thought I was Barack Obama. I thought that was fantastic. Fantastic. It's like that was the best guess of all. And then the dress rehearsal, you're in full costume. So already, you don't speak until the music starts, and then you're singing.
That's great.
That's so crazy.
David Spade had a great joke on Stern where he's like, I love that show. They're always like, is it Barbara Streisand? Is it Elton John? Oh, no, it's Mark McGrath.
But what's weird is sometimes it is somebody extraordinary. I mean, the reason I got kicked off is I was up against Patti LaBelle. You know what I mean? It's like, of course Patti LaBelle wins. Of course.
Well, you're an opera singer.
Yeah, but they wouldn't let me sing that stuff because it was a rock eagle. Like, it's the character. Come on.
Oh.
And that I had this vocal injury at the time. I was trying to work around and through and stuff. It was. I would have done song choice very differently. I had in retrospect, and that would have made a difference for me. I would have lasted longer.
Who is the celebrity that you run into the most in LA?
Tom Arnold's a friend. I have lots of friends that are celebrities. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's hard. Carolla. I mean, Carolla talks to me every day.
All right. Well, then who's the biggest name you have in your phone?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's pretty good.
It's a good one, yeah.
What's your thoughts on Caitlyn running for
I think it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I think, first of all, people are so disgusted with what's going on in California that this is reminds me of the Gray Davis time too. They get disgusted, like, put somebody in there, come on. And Caitlyn is unassailable on many fronts, and I want to hear what her policies are going to be. I'm very interested. Look, this is an extraordinarily accomplished person, an Olympic champion, and an interesting life course, smart person, probably has some interesting ideas. Let's hear them. I want to hear them. So I love the whole idea of it.
As someone who knows the addiction to fame, how do we make sure she's going at it for the right reasons, is not chasing fame?
You don't live in California, do you, Adam? Dax, help him understand how disgusted everybody is in California.
Arnold as the governor, man. People go for names out here. It's crazy.
Especially in this recall effort, because the recall is: do you want to recall the governor? Yes or no? And then, if yes, who do you want to be governor? And there's a list of 100 people, and if you don't know the names, it's going to be hard to choose.
True.
Yeah, but hasn't she always been like Republican?
I think that would be hard
to win in California.
I think it would be hard to win. I think independent would probably do better. People are trying to get me to run for governor, and my last S-storm around trying to help homelessness proved to me that it's like, I'm not sure it's worth it to try to help that state. That people are just awful. Really awful.
Dude, why were they? I saw that. It happened a few days ago. You're in the news because, obviously you've been outspoken about the issue with homelessness and the problems with it in LA. But why? I feel like people see you, and obviously you're successful, but they make you, and it's not just you, a lot of people, because they see you're just an easy target for them. They
turn you into a cartoon character. They turn you into a cartoon, and they are, the newspaper print will print anything anybody says. Anything. Without checking. I ended up calling the reporter going, why didn't you ask me my professional credentials? And anti-immigrant? That's disgusting. Where did you get that? My grandfather immigrated to this country to get away from the Ukrainian genocide. I'm an immigrant. How disgusting of you. And they're like, oh, we tried. You did not try. You did not try. You didn't say, what are your professional credentials? Let me hear them. I'm happy to share them with you. Oh my God, these people are. Did they I told my son. What's that?
Did they retract it?
No, they didn't retract or update or anything. I told my son when he's going to take the bar in July, so he passed the bar, I'm going to put him to work full time suing people. I've had it. I have just had it with the slander and libel that people get away with zero consequence. It has to stop. It must stop. Some of us have got to push back.
So when you start doing interviews now with media outlets, let's say, for example, not like you'll go back to them, is the LA Times. I know you had beef with them with the LA Times. Are you now, when you do print?
I don't do print. I will not do print. I will not do print because they are irresponsible, reprehensible, libelous. They will never, and I mean, I've never had a print story that reflected my reality. That's how, it's how, it's funny. My son was managing my Twitter during one of the shitstorms recently. And he watched the fake news develop, and it infuriated him. And you can see fake news laundering. I love this word, laundering through the system. And then the legitimate, so-called legitimate press reports it as fact. It's reprehensible what's going on here. And there's got to be some pushback. Somebody has to. People are getting hurt. People are losing their careers. People are being destabilized from their mental health perspective. It's time to stand up to this. It is. And I think you're going to see more of that soon. I mean,
especially with cancel culture. I mean, people are so quick to just cancel someone off of their with the career that they've built over the last 30 years or whatever.
They don't care about their livelihood, their family, the people they're responsible for. And most of the time, the cancel is built off the laundered story, not the actual facts. So it's actually a reaction to an unreality. And so print is the most disgusting media out there. At least in television or podcast or radio, you have some control over the content because you're presenting it. But of course, it can be misrepresented still.
Yeah. No,
sure. I get it.
It's disgusting. That's the word that has come to mind for me lately. It is truly disgusting what they're doing, and people should be. They should let their businesses fail, these print media outlets and things that are so disgusting. Respond to them like you would anything else that is disgusting in your life. Pull away. Be careful.
Well, I want to shift gears because I want to do something a little lighter than this because I can see the print topic you were pretty fired up about. But I want to get it. We've been doing something fun, Dr. Drew, where we've been having fan question roulette. All right. So the fans of the podcast have no idea which celebrities coming on the podcast this week.
I get it.
They submit questions. We plan. We haven't even heard them. All right. We're going with Nick.
Hey, Dax and Adam. I'm a huge fan of the show. My question for the guest is, what is the naughtiest thing you ever did in school?
Me? That's me. The naughtiest thing I ever did in school?
For you.
It's funny. I was just talking about it the other day. I tried to steal, when I was 11, a little like pressed cardboard is about this big, little sort of lid that I needed, and this shop teacher wouldn't let any of us get near it. And he caught me and he dragged me into, this was the most horrifying experience of my life too. And I'm 11, and dragged me to the principal's office and insisted that I was a burgeoning criminal. And they had to really call them, and he was not kidding. It was not like it was a display because I remember the principal going, let's kind of see how this works out. Let's see where this goes. I'm not sure that's the right approach. And that principal ended up becoming one of my patients 20 years later, and was a saint, a great guy.
Very cool.
So
I've got a good story for you guys on virgin criminals. When I was in like 4th grade, my buddy Nick and I, we were taking like math class. They were teaching us how to like write checks and stuff at that point. And we had a carnival coming up for the school to raise money.
Oh, perfect.
So we forged one of these like check. I think we literally whited out where it says void. We wrote the check for $100. Gave it to them. They piled us up with all these tickets and coupons.
Oh, it's perfect.
And we went and we played the carnival like crazy, had so much fun. And then like mid-carnival, I think one of us like kind of had the guilt on our chest. And we told one of our parents. Our parents made us go back to the person that had sold us the tickets and confess. And they like blamed us how we were just these horrible children. I'm like, you fell for a fake check.
I felt pretty good about it.
It's like a 4th grader.
But you win. My larceny was about 25 cents, maybe a nickel. Here's $100. Pretty good. Age 9.
We couldn't believe they took it. We're like, oh my God, that actually worked. And then we thought for the rest of life we could just get away with stolen checks.
On to a
All
career
right. We got
in
another
entertainment
question.
news.
All right, one more question for you.
Yeah.
This one's from Reagan.
Hi, Dax and Adam. My question to you is, what is one piece of advice that someone else has given to you that has really stuck with you throughout your life?
Oh my gosh, so many important things. I mean, that's all medical training is learning from the people ahead of you. I don't know, let me think on it. What do you guys have anything?
Oh, mine's easy. Mine's from my friend Kimmy Kardashian. She said, "Fake it till you make it."
I don't have stuff like that.
I know. Mine was going to say, mine's so terrible. Mine was Kid Rock, and the hardest thing in Hollywood is being famous with no money.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
But that's no like personal life advice.
I don't have any serious ones.
It's so funny. I mean, I've had so much advice from so many people. It's funny that, I think some of this may actually be COVID brain. So I have since COVID, I was sick for 3 months with COVID, and I had long hauler syndrome, and I was foggy and all this stuff. And what I'm left with is occasionally I'll be speaking, and all of a sudden my mind will stop. It'll just block. And I feel like something's happening like that right now in terms of this question. Gosh.
There's something in your gut that you just kind of realized to yourself that you stuck with you over the years.
Yeah, I'm finding myself thinking about. I don't know that it's advice, but it's about being on a team that I've discovered about myself. That I was very independent, practicing medicine by myself, but I loved working with a team with psychiatric patients. And so I guess I don't know if anybody ever told me this or what. Oh God, I had so many good advices over the years. Any event, just if you're somebody that enjoys working in teams, really pay attention to that, because it is a very different kind of experience. If you're good in teams and work in teams, you can do a lot more as a team member. But I remember I used to spend a lot of time talking to this old psychiatrist. He was like 75 years old, and I was like 27, and he was an old timer. And I wish I know he just filled my head with lots of good advice. I can't remember anything right now, but anyway, that's it.
It's all right.
Good. It's all good.
My last question for you, Dr. Drew, is what was the coolest dinner you've ever had in LA? Like where you sat at the table and you're looking around the room like, man, like this is fucking pretty cool. Like this is just really cool people. I can't believe I'm sitting with these people right now. Who was at that table with you?
The first time that happened to me, I'm just what jumps in my head, because I've been very fortunate to have a bunch of cool dinners. Usually they were, oh my gosh, I've had so many. They were after like a premiere or something, or those things where sometimes I've hosted these things where the stars and the director talk about the movie that you're watching and stuff, and they do it for industry people. Those are always amazing. But the first time that happened to me, it was it was Christmas, a Christmas gathering of the radio air staff. And it was the K-Rock radio air staff circa 1983 or maybe 84.
That's a good staff.
Yeah. And I was a listener before I was a part of the whole situation there. And I was just so struck that I was sitting with these creative people, and the people are having such an impact on at least Los Angeles at the time. So that was the first time I experienced that.
So I know you've got like 100 jobs right now.
I really don't. Right now,
yes,
things are kind of.
You're always like recording something, podcasting.
Yeah, but I mean, look. I realized Shelly from Celebrity Rehab, glasses and the blonde hair. Mm-hmm. She and I were talking the other day, like about a week ago, and we just realized that clinical work is so hard, particularly addicts, and that once you've done that 12 hours a day, nothing else feels like work. It just doesn't feel like work. I don't feel like I'm working here with you. I feel like I'm having a conversation with you. And after this, we're going to film a streaming show, and that feels like fun and interesting and engagement. It does not feel like work. It just doesn't.
That's awesome.
So tell, for people that haven't tuned in to Dr. Drew After Dark or your streaming show, like,
okay,
what can people expect?
Okay, so I do several very, very different kinds of shows, right? And they're all at my website, drdrew.com. So I do 3 days a week, a podcast with Adam Carolla. And that is a lot. If you like Adam, you will like that show, because a lot of it is me going, yes, Adam. Uh-huh. Yep. Not only that, Adam. Yep, Adam. Yes, Adam. Uh-huh. And not only that, Adam, but did you think about this? And every week we do an analysis of The Love Boat. You'll have to listen to it to understand why we do that. And then I do my own podcast, the Dr. Drew podcast, with pretty serious intellectuals and scientists and things. And I've been extremely happy with the guests we've had lately. The last 3 or 4 that are up, and the next 4 that are coming are just extraordinary interviews. I recommend it highly if you're interested in learning something. The streaming shows are much more, it's obviously live and day and date, and we interact. I either take phone calls off Clubhouse while I'm streaming, so we do Clubhouse phone interaction, or I look at a restream from Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and kind of take questions and interact with people. It's been a lot about COVID. I mean, I'm just trying, a lot of it is what's on people's minds, and COVID is what's on people's mind. And we try to make sense of things, try to calm everybody down, make sense of things. And then After Dark is the outlier. After Dark is the new love line from my position. It is, it's me and Christina P., Tom Segura's wife, trying to struggle with the stuff that's out there on TikTok and YouTube, and people call in with voice messages and emails. And I've been doing a number of shows without Christina, just by myself, which is really very Loveline-esque. It's just me answering questions. And the kinds of questions are sort of Loveline-esque type questions. And that show, there's something very, very, very special about that show. It's funny, it's interesting, and there's some important information. So that's Loveline, right? It was funny, interesting, different, interactive, and important information hidden in it.
That's
cool.
Great. Well, listen,
people,
you can follow.
I guess I can say people love the Loveline stuff.
Yeah, they love Loveline.
Well, they love Your Mom's House, which is the platform where that show is. That's Tom Segura and his wife, Your Mom's House, and Bert Kreischer is very involved with it. They have 2 Bears, 1 Cave, and Bert Kreischer's wife is involved. It's a whole family there that we're all involved with. And it's interesting when I take some of the questions I've gotten off Clubhouse are questions about that little family. Like how did you guys get together? I'm so intrigued by the relationships amongst the 4 of you, meaning me, Tom, my wife, and Christina P. And it is kind of a real time, not soap opera, but an office, like a reality office show.
Yeah.
So great.
Well, listen, Dr. Drew, I miss running into you on the streets of New York City. He's a pro at ambush paparazzi like I do. He just knows how to handle it.
So if you want to find Adam, he's out inside the London hotel. And if he's not outside the London, he's in his office across the street. So
Yeah, pretty much. I'm running around. So
Look,
Dr. Drew,
it's so great to find, a face you recognize and trust behind that camera, right? Let me stroke you guys a little bit for a second.
Yeah.
Because when what you see on TMZ and out there and stuff are guys like Adam running around with a little video camera, and it is what they do is an art form, and it's exceedingly difficult. And from on the other side of the camera, it's dangerous. And to have somebody you trust on the other side asking difficult questions, you guys, because you have to, that's your job, and funny questions, that's your job. But to be able to trust that person makes you stop and go, all right, let's talk. Let's see what we got.
I appreciate that, but you always handle a class and always give a great answer. And on the other side for us, it's always refreshing dealing with someone who's just cool about it. It makes our job easier. And I'm always fortunate because you give us 2 minutes of your time, I'm able to pay for my health insurance. So
I think it's sort of weird to me to hide from you guys. I understand the treachery because some of the camera holders may ask really crazy questions, and then you're caught going, I'm not, and that doesn't look good. But I understand you're doing a job. It's an industry, and it's why do you get offended by that? You should be sort of help them out. What's the big deal?
I agree. I always try to thank the person off camera. Say, hey, listen, thank you, and literally say the same exact words. Thank you for your time. Because of that, I'm able to pay my bills.
I believe that. I believe that's good
for you, but because you're doing that, you give me some of your time. Yeah. I'm able to be employed.
And to be fair, I mean, if you don't want to have a public life, don't have a public life. That's fine. Yeah. But part of being in the public is all this mishigas. And I must tell you, you asked earlier about all the print media and nonsense and crap storms I get involved with. I'm kind of getting used to it. I used to have very thin skin. I remember when Amazon first started putting commentary about books on the Amazon site, and when people would say these horrible things about something I'd written, I'd be extremely upset and incensed. How dare they? Now it's like, oh my God, I just get used to horrible things being said. And it really, like I said, it's a time to push back. It's also time to keep your head up high and keep doing good, and then leave it at that.
Hey, if you don't have haters, you're not being successful.
Well, it's funny you would say that. My publicist about 2 years ago, she goes, in the post-Trump era, if you're not in the middle of a crap storm, you don't exist. I was like, boy, she is right. She is really right. But it's not fun. I must tell you, and some people, I could see where people would be literally injured by some of the things people say.
For sure.
Well, thank you, Dr. Drew. We appreciate your time.
Always a privilege.
So thank you.
I'm going to walk over to London right now, see if I can find Adam.
You'll see me there pretty soon. I'm not going to lie.
That's good.
One of the nicest dudes, man. I'm telling you, I've seen him over the years. I mean, you have a very close relationship with him. For me, I've only seen him in New York. And, we ran into him in LA. We came on his show. But I've always seen him on the streets. And it's just always so cool, so nice. And I feel in some ways sometimes bad for him because he's an easy target. People always like to give him shit because like he talked about, but I'm like, he's fucking great. Like him, Dr. Oz, they're some of the nicest people I deal with. They're cool guys and they come from a good place. They're there to help.
I think the most interesting part of our conversation with Dr. Drew was talking about Britney Spears. I don't know. Personally, I find that stuff so fascinating, talking about Britney Spears, talking about just the behind the scenes of like Celeb Rehab, the TV show, behind the scenes of The Masked Singer. I don't know. I just feel like he's done a little bit of it all. He's a really smart dude, and his perspectives, I think, are fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he talked about Celebrity Rehab and other producers tried to say, okay, they try to make it into a reality show, and he's like, listen, my credibility's on the line. My colleagues are
people's lives are on the line. Not even his credibility. He's like, people's lives are on the line, and you're sitting there baiting them into getting in fights with other people.
It's pretty wild, man. But good guy. Glad to have him on. You can find him at make sure you follow him. It's at Dr. Drew Pinsky. He's a fun follow. Make sure you follow Hollywood Podcast. We have this whole podcast on our YouTube page where you can see the whole entire interview. We're on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. We're on all the social media apps. So make sure you follow Hollywood Podcast and make sure you leave a review. That's the best thing you do to support this podcast. You can find me at Adam Glyn. You can find Dax Holt at DAXHOLT. And we'll see you guys next time.